This is Land of Havilah, Ecclesiastes 5. In the first 7 verses coming up, be careful in prayer because you're in the presence of God. Verse 1. Guard your steps when you go to God's house, for to draw near to listen is better than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they don't know that they do evil. Comment: when Solomon says guard your steps when you go to God's house, he means be careful because prayer can be dangerous. He says put yourself in the right frame of mind because when you arrive at the temple, you don't want to babble like a fool in his presence. A fool thinks he's making some type of sacrifice to God when he does all those long prayers. But it's foolish. Go there more for listening as your primary purpose and not so much for speaking. On the same subject, verse 2, don't be rash with your mouth, and don't let your heart be hasty to utter anything before God, for God is in heaven and you on earth. Therefore let your words be few. Comment: don't be rash in prayer. Before you open your mouth, remember how high God is and how humble you should be. Realizing that, let your words be few out of respect for who it is you're speaking to. Now elaborating, verse 3. For as a dream comes with a multitude of cares, so a fool's speech with a multitude of words. Comment: our dreams in the night are filled with a multitude of cares and worries, but when we wake up, we realize the cares and worries were nonsensical. Such is the fool when he comes to God. He's full of a multitude of nonsensical cares and worries that he wouldn't even have if he kept in mind who God is. Therefore, approach God with faith. There's no need to speak on and on about your problems because he already knows the details. Besides, he can easily solve them and isn't moved by your multitude of words, but more by your realization of who he is. And while you're praying, verse 4, when you vow a vow to God, don't defer to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay that which you vow. It's better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Don't allow your mouth to lead you into sin. Don't protest before the messenger that this was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? Comment in verses 4 through 6, when you make a vow to God, pay it promptly. Don't defer it. If you told him you'd do something, do it. You shouldn't have said it if you weren't going to fulfill it, and you should fulfill it promptly. Better you shouldn't have said anything than to say it and not do it. When the messenger comes, meaning the Spirit of God, and reminds you of the vow you made, don't dare tell him you made it by mistake. Why should he be angry with you and set himself against you on account that you spoke rashly and weren't willing to fulfill it? Verse 7. For in the multitude of dreams there are vanities as well as in many words, but you must fear God. Comment: the more you say to God, the more likely you'll say something empty that you don't mean, so keep it brief and keep it true. Now coming up in a new section, it's back to the description of some futile circumstances in life that leave a person empty. Verse 1. If you see the oppression of the poor and the violent taking away of justice and righteousness in a district, don't marvel at the matter, for one official's eyed by a higher one, and there are officials over them. Moreover, the profit of the earth is for all. The king profits from the field. Comment in verse 8, life's miserable in a totalitarian system. The king rules by force. Don't marvel at the matter, meaning don't be surprised that his officers at street level are violent. Of course they are. They're under a chain of command that goes all the way to the top. And in verse 9, if you're under that system, say as a farmer, your labor is for the king, not for you. You don't necessarily get any profit from it. That's the way it is in a totalitarian state. The individual serves the state, and if he doesn't, he gets beaten. So that's another misery in life. And if you think being free and independently wealthy will make you happy, that might be better, but, verse 10, he who loves silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity. When goods increase, those who eat them are increased. And what advantage is there to its owner except to feast on them with his eyes? Comment in verses 10 and 11, life under a system that allows you to accumulate some wealth might be better than life as an oppressed servant who's not allowed to keep anything, but wealth isn't a total answer. It's not satisfying. In the first place, there's only so much you can eat with your mouth. The rest of your wealth you can only feast on with your eyes. And with the increase of goods, you'll be increased, meaning wealth changes you so that it takes more and more to make you happy. So the goalposts of happiness are always moving further away. Someone asked a millionaire how many millions would be enough. He said, one more. Furthermore, on the inadequacy of wealth, verse 12, the sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not allow him to sleep. There's a grievous evil which I've seen under the sun, wealth kept by its owner to his harm. Those riches perish by misfortune, and if he's father to son, there's nothing in his hand. As he came out of his mother's womb, naked shall he go again as he came, and shall take nothing for his labor which he may carry away in his hand. This also is a grievous evil, that in all points as he came, so shall he go. And what profit does he have who labors for the wind? All his days he also eats in darkness. He's frustrated and has sickness and wrath. Comment in verses 12 to 17, wealth comes with some disadvantages. It costs you the ability to sleep well because someone who's at ease all day doesn't sleep as well as a laborer. And in verse 14, if you're wealthy, congratulations, but now you have a worry you didn't have before, that you might lose it. Your wealth might perish by misfortune. In verse 15, if you don't lose it in life, you'll certainly lose it in death. Naked we came into the earth, and naked we leave it. You can't take it with you. A man shall, quote, take nothing for his labor which he may carry away in his hand. So that's another raw deal, a grievous evil, Solomon calls it in verse 16. In Solomon's negative frame of mind, he thinks of the negative in everything, even of wealth. But the point's still valid that wealth isn't an answer to man's emptiness. In verse 17, he might be describing his own experience because he sees a wealthy man in his mind's eye, eating in darkness, frustrated with a vague sickness within himself, that something that his wealth can't cure inside, or sickness of body that his wealth can't cure, feeling like he's under wrath, wondering what he did to make, wondering why God's so mad at him that he makes him feel so bad. So since wealth isn't an answer, what do we say? Verse 18, behold, that which I've seen to be good and proper is for one to eat and to drink and to enjoy good in all his labor in which he labors under the sun, all the days of his life which God has given him, for this is his portion. Every man also to whom God has given riches and wealth, and has given him the power to eat of it, and to take his portion, and to rejoice in his labor, this is the gift of God. For he shall not often reflect on the days of his life, because God occupies him with the joy of his heart. Comment in verse 18, for the person who works and earns a living, hopefully he can enjoy the good in his labor. This is his portion, meaning this is about as good as he can hope for, to work and enjoy it and enjoy the fruits of it. And if you have riches in verses 19 and 20, hopefully God's keeping you occupied with joy and the power to be happy, which is better than brooding about life all the time and your dissatisfaction with it. In the mind of the Christian, better to set your mind on things above, Colossians 3:2, and to be a beneficiary of God's precious and exceedingly great promises, 2 Peter 1:4, enjoying the fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5:22 and 23, and otherwise experiencing abundant life, John 10:10, and experiencing the exceeding greatness of his power toward us, Ephesians 1:19. We're not just satisfied, but have a taste of glory, 1 Peter 1:8. Ecclesiastes 6 is next.